telling me they love this new Samoa Joe thing. They want to hear me rock on it. Send this out to Wale. Shout out Rosenberg. Stu Joe. It's the Super showing up like Lex Luger. Back in the fold, throwing out gold like Medusa. Podcast steadfast. Shout out to Fedcast. Kill your whole legacy like the Fed did the Bash, Shanzi and the shotgun. Of course, that's the other one. Three Musketeers up in this here like Jonathan. Mudo Hashimoto, Ernest Matthews, he like Hase. Parliament Funk, burning a hammer like Kabashi. Come on. Super Show flow. Super Show flow. I'm about to wreck the body with my Super Show flow. I'm about to wreck the body with my Super Show flow. Let's go.
So, Daniel, quite a contrast sitting in this room backstage compared to what you just witnessed out there. Put in perspective what's going through your head right now.
Sadness. So, you know it's coming. You know what you're going out there to say and what that means. You know, and it's hard sometimes because we say so many things out there that are fiction, right? We go out there and we deliver works of fiction. And to go out there and say something that you wish was fiction, it's very, very difficult.
Super Show 10. Myself, the Grime Minister Luke Forrest, Shotgun Shan, and Sean Cunningham, the three musketeers of Wrestle Talk Radio, are back together. For all of you listening to us on Spreaker Web Radio Network and at our website at WrestlingAudioRevolution.com, we thank you very much for being here. And before I get to my two brothers here and we start to talk about what was a very newsworthy week in the world of professional wrestling, the biggest story of the week, of course, being the retirement of Daniel Bryan, which was announced on Monday's Raw. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about his career, some of our favorite memories, and we'll get through this whole situation because there is a lot of information and a lot of fact that needs to be separated from fiction. So we will do that over the next hour. Before we do that, I just want to say to the Solomonster, Jason Solomon, Sean Cunningham, I know you do have some mutual friends with him as well.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to wish him the very best. He has been recently diagnosed with blood cancer. This is a guy that has put in a lot of work. I mean, we're all trying to compete with each other. We're all trying to put up the best podcast and trying to crush the competition. But at the end of the day, we're one big family. We're all brothers and sisters in this podcast game. And Jason, you have nothing but the respect of the three men on the line right now and the entire Wrestling Audio Revolution family. Get well. Another member of the family that's been down as of late is Matt Mazurkovich, Mean Matt, who has appeared on Wrestling Audio Revolution programming in the past, both by himself and also alongside his brother Dangy. He has been in the hospital for the last month and a half, but I have been told that over the last 48 hours, Matt is now back home. So we want to wish him, again, a speedy recovery. We are giving an open invitation to Matt to, I think maybe even on the next edition of War Weekly, Sean, I think we need to have Matt on.
Yeah, we'll do our best to definitely do that. That invitation is open to him.
I've also heard from his brother Dangy, who also would like to appear back on the show again, and we want him back. We've wanted him back for a while. It's just been a bit of a scheduling thing. So to the Mazurkovich family and to Matt, we're very happy you're home, and again, a speedy recovery to you. And, of course, to the Solomonster, Jason Solomon. Also, got to say, Bret the Hitman Hart did have surgery this week. And we have not heard too much regarding the surgery other than it seems to have been a success. So a speedy recovery to Bret Hart as well. But Sean Cunningham, first of all, why don't I just get your thoughts on, Monday? I mean, the entire day. The news just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think anyone was expecting it. Where are you at right now? And how are you feeling regarding the Daniel Bryan retirement?
I went through a couple of emotions, most of them going into Monday afternoon and coming out of Monday night. At first, I was kind of confused when I read it. Not that I don't believe him, but I wondered about, is this him trying to get out of something? Was this some kind of political move? And then as the day went on, I started to read more things. I realized that, okay, this is not a work, this is not an angle, this is not politically motivated. He is going to retire because a doctor found something that's not good. And then I went through this phase of being very sad because it's a great talent leaving the wrestling business because he gave a lot of his body and a lot of his health. And then to listen to him on Monday night, I'm going to steal his word, gratitude. He just seemed so gracious and wanted to make even that moment fun for all the fans and to stand there and tell stories and do everything that he did. So to Daniel Bryan, I hope everything that you do goes well, and we'll have a lot more to say about this. I'm sure we all will.
Shotgun Shan, nobody was holding out more hope than you regarding Daniel Bryan in his career. I mean, you were the positive one of the three of us. Really, you were. And God bless you for it. But where are you at right now, and what are your thoughts? We'll talk about the segment, but just in general, your thoughts of Monday and sort of the roller coaster ride that it was as a wrestling fan.
Well, much like Sean, I mean, I went through a sort of a series of different emotions. Initially, when I heard about it, I did have the suspicion. I knew that he was trying to get out of his contract so that he could wrestle somewhere else, or at least we'd heard that news. And so my first thought is, of course, a hopeful thought that, yes, he's going to try to get out and he's going to go do something else. And as the story progressed, as we found out more, I really hoped that it was a work, because Brian was one of those guys that really genuinely captured people's emotion and captured people's attention, certainly mine. I was very inspired when I would see him wrestle, just because of the level that he took things and the obstacles that he faced. And as much as frustrating it was as for a fan to watch Daniel Bryan, have to struggle against the powers that be within WWE in front of the camera and behind the scenes, it's still in the end really kind of adds to his legacy. So, I went through all that struggle, and then when we found out the severity of the injury, there was that feeling when Shawn Michaels retired, and I don't think any of us really thought Shawn Michaels would be back. But looking back on it, it was the kind of injury that, yes, you could take several years off and come back, as Shawn did. There's a finality to this with Daniel Bryan that's a little hard to take. It's a little bit heartbreaking, knowing that the injury that he has is actually to his brain. And as we'll get into later, when we talk about some of the interviews that he's given, that there was a severity and a real danger there, that we know that we'll never see Daniel Bryan wrestle again, unless there's some kind of miraculous cure that we don't know about or some kind of procedure. But that's the end of Daniel Bryan in the ring. So it's easy to look at what might have been, but I'm finding right now I'm trying more to look back and appreciate what really did happen. And I really do love the man's career, particularly the past few years. And so, I'm grateful as well. Grateful for Daniel Bryan, a great guy, compelling character in and out of the ring, and a pretty fabulous career considering.
It's kind of hard to know where to start. I mean, it's almost a blur as to how this all went down. There was that neck injury. He was having the numbness in his arms and all that stuff, and that was after he'd won the title at WrestleMania. And that's a moment that I'm sure we'll get a lot of burn here on this show, because it's a moment that can never be taken away. It's a moment that 1.1% of wrestlers are ever able to have, that closing moment of WrestleMania. Yeah. I mean, Sean, I was trying to think of this the other day. The Rock never had this moment, did he?
No.
The Rock never had a moment where he closed WrestleMania with the confetti falling and happy moment for The Rock.
Because he lost.
Because he was always in that big main event against, say, Austin. That's the one that comes to my mind of shows that he closed. Mm-hmm. But it was never his time to win. And the one time when he did, it was in the middle of the card due to Austin's health. I mean, The Rock never had this moment, ladies and gentlemen.
And even more so, I mean, Bryan got to beat 3 top-tier talents in one night en route to having that moment. So, I mean, it was a very significant, when you look back at what Daniel Bryan accomplished that night, was a hugely significant moment.
And it's something, like I say, that can never be taken away. Yes, it was botched immediately.
Well, but the thing about that moment for Bryan, and I will say this because I can compare, we all have watched basically every WrestleMania and every end to WrestleMania. We all think of the multiple Hogan moments where he ended the night in that same position. Bryan, to me, evoked more emotion and a different emotion from the same audience that nobody will ever be able to duplicate.
I agree.
Completely agree with that. His influence on the industry, on the product that you see today, on the talent that has been hired over the last 5 years, for instance, and how much he changed the company and the game and the whole landscape of pro wrestling. But like you said, Shan, I mean, with what he came out and said during that segment, it's really hard to ever go back on that. It is so public now. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't all of a sudden one WrestleMania, oh shit, everybody's down. We don't have any big stars. We need to do something. We need to do something. Okay, let's have Bryan wrestle one more match. You can never do that again after that moment and the things that were said in that ring.
Even the admission that he made, that he said, I was ready to go whenever they called.
And he was.
Yep.
His plan was not to retire.
Yep.
There was a lot of discussion regarding why he was not being cleared. And there was a whole lot of stuff that really felt like it was politically motivated, and it felt like they're doing this to cover their own asses. They're in the middle of lawsuits. The movie Concussion is a big part of this as well. Dr. James Maroon is a character in that movie. I don't know if you guys realize that. I wouldn't say he's full-on vilified, but he's certainly
pretty close.
Pretty damn close. He's kind of pretty laxed about concussions. And that's a big movie, right now. And there's all these spotlights that were kind of shining on it that were just making you say, even if he is fine, if they have any worry about it, they're not going to clear him because of the fact of Dr. James Maroon. Now, as we've, been able to learn a bit more about it, he was full-on told he wasn't going to be cleared and you never would. That was what he was told. He fought that. He, on his own dime, went out to some of the best neurosurgeons out there, UCLA, etc., on his own dime, because the WWE medical was not going to clear him, and he wanted to prove that, I'm fine, I'm okay, so-and-so said it, so-and-so said it, and this became a big topic in the debates. Yes. About, these doctors have cleared him, so clearly he's not that bad. Following January the 28th, which he pretty much detailed in his speech, things changed. Bryan had every intention of going to New Japan Pro Wrestling. If he wasn't going to be cleared by WWE, he wanted out of his contract. He tried to get out of his contract. Vince did not let him out of his contract, and he wanted to go to New Japan. He wanted to go to CMLL because, they have the working relationship with New Japan. He really wanted to do the lucha thing as well. He just felt like that was something in his career that he'd never fully conquered. He wanted to go back to Ring of Honor. All of those companies are in bed with each other, so it would have been the perfect fit for him. And that was his intention. Thank God that did not happen. Thank God Vince McMahon did not let him out of his contract. When was his last match, Sean? I know what it was. It was John Cena and him against Cesaro and Kidd, but when was that?
Oh, my God.
Very shortly after WrestleMania. Was it just 2 days after?
I think it was like the SmackDown after,
Right.
Yeah, he defended against Ziggler on the Raw after, and then I think it was the SmackDown after he had that match, and then that was it.
And the whole talk yet not talk, because nobody wanted to talk about it, about what was going on with him. We knew that it was concussion related. The one thing I think you'd have to put your finger on was the fact that through all of that, they found out that he had seizures. It's been about 4 years since he's had a seizure. But it was something that came up in all of that where I think they got really scared. He went off on his own. He tried to get cleared. He got some doctors to clear him. But sometime after January 28th, he found out from another doctor some news that was not good. And that's pretty much, I guess, was when he decided, because a lot of people, I think, still feel as though the company said, you're going out there and you're retiring. You're done. And he said, no. That's not what happened. They did not tell him to retire. Vince never said, you have to retire.
The company would have preferred it to be sooner than later, I think.
From that speech, it was pretty obvious this guy's not going to New Japan. He's not going on, and he's not being given this platform in this 30 minutes, I think it was. It was close to 30 minutes.
35 minutes.
35 minutes to close out the show and go out there without a script and just tell it like it is. He's not being given that opportunity if they think he's going to wrestle and go to New Japan or CMLL or Ring of Honor. There was a definite finality that had come sometime after January the 28th with Bryan.
Thank God that Bryan came to this conclusion on his own, I guess, rather than being forced by the company, because I think that would open up so many other things.
That's the thing. I mean, really, when you look at this and you look at the positives of this situation, he really did get to make the choice. He didn't get forced out. He didn't have to continue, fighting and being frustrated as sort of this thing that he loved so much was taken away from him. It was really up to Bryan to be able to make that choice, and for all the right reasons. I mean, I found his speech to be very moving, very on point, and very it made tremendous sense. It was easier to accept when you heard him explain the condition he was in and what his priorities were in life, and that was, for him to have a family and to take care of himself. I mean, he really had to take care of himself. This wasn't something where he was going to be, have his knee blown out and maybe have to hobble the rest of his life. This was a brain injury that could have ended his life or left him in a terrible state. And, I think as he kind of explained that, it became easier to take and easier to understand. And as in anything that Bryan ever did, at least in WWE, he was a character that was immediately identifiable. You could immediately put yourself in his position and relate to him, and he could evoke that from you. And even his final retirement speech was much the same. I felt myself going, yeah, that's what I do. Good for you, Bryan. So, yeah.
I mean, all of the things that people said were being done to cover the ass of the company. If that was the case, I don't blame them. That's what they should have done. They should have been protecting themselves. It was going to look really bad. And this is why, for me, it took me off guard, but this was not a big surprising announcement to me, as you guys both know. And this is the last thing I'm doing is coming on here and saying, I told you so. Because this is not a moment for anyone to gloat or to say, I told you guys this is what was going to happen. That's not what I'm doing. But I did accept this a lot earlier than Monday because of all of the factors. There was just way too much for them to turn a blind eye to. And Bryan, his career, there was something called the King of, this is pre-Ring of Honor. This is that WCW wasteland after things closed, right? Everything turned Mad Max there for a year or so.
Oh, that's right.
Before the TNA started, before the Ring of Honor started, there was something called the King of the Indies. Have you guys ever heard of this before? The King of the Indies tournament.
Yes.
And some of the talent, a couple guys you might have heard of, went on to do a few things. AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Bryan Danielson, Low Key. These were some of the guys that were involved in this tournament. The reason this is so important is because, Bryan Danielson beat Low Key in the finals. There was a couple guys, one named Rob Feinstein of RF Video, the other named Gabe Sapolsky, and Gabe Sapolsky and Rob Feinstein watched the tape of this King of the Indies tournament, and they thought, by God, this is enough talent to start a promotion. If you took these guys and you started a promotion, that would be the most kick-ass promotion ever. And so, what did they do? They started this little promotion. What did they call it? Ring of Honor. It was that tournament, it was that group of talent that inspired them to even start the company. And Bryan is one of the founding fathers. Samoa Joe, Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, those are the first three real stars of Ring of Honor. They were the first identity of Ring of Honor. They were the faces of Ring of Honor. When you thought Ring of Honor, that's who you thought of. And everything after that was built on the reputation of those early years and this kick-ass promotion with all this great talent. Ring of Honor today can't touch, in terms of talent, the roster that it had then. But the reputation has managed to go on. The style that those guys brought completely transformed the business. It's still seen in Ring of Honor today, but it's seen just as much on the WWE main roster because you have all these guys that came afterwards, the Kevin Steens, the Seth Rollins, the Cesaro, all these guys were products of that Ring of Honor style, which, again, was created by that founding fathers, Bryan Danielson, and the original group of guys that came in and made that. So just, to give you some context of how much this guy changed the industry, it's huge, his contributions.
Yeah, and that's just in his early days. That doesn't even that sets the tone for what he would kind of do going forward.
I got to encourage you to go back, really study his career, watch as much of the Ring of Honor runs as you can, because that was him, with all the handcuffs off, created things. The thing with the Ring of Honor, and this is where it's a bit of a negative, and it still exists today, it was highly influenced by the All Japan style and by the Pro Wrestling Noah style, which was sort of in that early 2000s to mid 2000s. That was the cool thing. That was what everybody was trying to emulate in Ring of Honor. Unfortunately, that meant, idolizing Misawa, and that meant idolizing Kobashi. two of the guys that really were the first to do the whole apron spots, to do the German suplex on the apron, to do the tiger driver off the apron to the floor. They were the guys that were, the originators of that style. And I think that if you talk to Samoa Joe, or you talk to CM Punk, or you talk to Bryan Danielson, especially in those days, I mean, those guys were their favorites. That's who they were trying to emulate. And as great and as exciting as that style is, it was a lot of wear and tear. And Bryan, I mean, think of how hard he worked in WWE, because he took all kinds of dangerous things in those Ring of Honor days and in those early days. He was doing things that were way too far.
When you look back on it now, knowing what we know now about head injuries and concussions and all that, do you see the change now, or can you go back and watch that with a clear head and just shut it off and be a fan, or does it frighten you more?
You're a sports fan, right? You're a sports fan.
Yeah.
Football is not the game it used to be.
No, it's not.
Now, they have more protection. They have, whatever. They have helmets. Hockey, for instance. They didn't even used to wear helmets. Nowadays, a visor. Nowadays, that's not the case. But you can't tell me that hockey is the same game it was 50 years ago. No. Everything evolves. Everything gets faster, bigger, more smash mouth. That's just the way it is. And pro wrestling is no different. I would love to see more guys come along that were like, I'm going to get the most out of the least. I'm going to have a long career, and I'm going to do as much as I can to protect myself, but still find ways to get the crowd to invest in it. The problem with the Ring of Honor now is that that's what they're used to. That's what they're accustomed to. It would be very hard to retrain them, not to say you can't, but you have to recondition your audience.
Well, but is it scary now that some of those Ring of Honor guys are slowly trickling into the WWE, and you're going to have to retrain that audience somehow?
Not that slowly. I mean, you just think of all the guys that are there right now, I didn't even mention AJ Styles. There's another guy that was like from that Ring of Honor founding class. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, Masawa died in the ring.
Yeah.
And everybody thought that would be the catalyst to everybody being like, okay, this is all exciting and this is all really great and everything, but we need to stop doing this shit. We need to stop with all the suplexes on the head. We need to stop with the apron spots. Yeah. So, I mean, Masawa died in the ring. We all thought that would be the beginning of, a change. And it wasn't. And I don't know that it ever will come. But, Bryan, he laid it all out on the line long before he was making the money that he was making in WWE. The Japanese stuff, I mean, if anyone has never seen Kenta before, if you only know Hideo Itami, you need to really go and study some of the Kenta stuff, because a completely different wrestler, very hard-hitting, and to think that he may have gotten some concussions from those matches is no stretch of the imagination, whether you're talking about the Ring of Honor matches with Kenta or the Pro Wrestling Noah matches. But again, the influence cannot be denied of how much he changed the game. And then why don't you guys sort of get into this, how much he changed the WWE hiring. Look at WWE pre-Daniel Bryan, and then look at it now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Bryan, and I mean, let's give a bit of credit to Punk too, because he was a part of this as well.
Sure.
But it's no secret that WWE, or at least Vince McMahon and the top guys, would turn their nose up at the whole notion of indie wrestlers. They were considered to be beneath them, and they were, they really weren't considered to be someone that they would bring in and groom for something for the future. In both cases, both with Punk and with Bryan, I mean, I don't think it's any stretch to say that those guys were kind of disregarded, that they went further than anyone expected them to. But in both cases, and especially with Bryan's because he lacked the size, these were guys who tapped into that primal part of wrestling that's always worked since the beginning of wrestling, and it's that notion of somehow being able to connect with the fans. We're seeing now with Roman Reigns, where they're throwing as much money and time as they can into this notion that he's going to be their next big guy, but he still doesn't connect, and it's no fault of Roman. He's just a laid-back guy. But with guys like Bryan and with Punk, there was a flair there. There was an excitement with Bryan and Punk. There was there was something beyond just as basic personality or a basic character. There was something that people could either identify with or they could rail against or rally for. And, I mean, that, I think, expanded slowly and over time WWE's idea of what a primary top-tier wrestler can be, that they can really capture. I mean, you know, when the whole Yes movement was going on, and maybe we supplied some of this ourselves, but there was always the notion that the office was quite resentful of the fact that the audience only wanted to see Daniel Bryan. No matter what else they put out there, the audience would boo and cheer only for Bryan. And as we saw, the audience managed to ride that to the point of manipulating the main event for WrestleMania 30. So, I mean, in that way, I think Bryan was such a huge catalyst. He was a guy that never was given that many opportunities in WWE to rise above a certain station, and yet did. Even though remember that terrible heel run they gave him where he was sort of with the Wyatts? Even through that, the fans were behind him.
I was going to say, even in that quote-unquote horrible heel run with the Wyatts, they turned that into gold.
Exactly.
Everybody talks about the cage match where he was technically teamed with Bray Wyatt, and he just let the Usos leave.
Yeah.
And it was this, you could just feel the moment.
Yeah, can you guys name a guy who, without really being a character, and not that Bryan wasn't a character, but we're not talking about a Stone Cold here who had a lot of catchphrases and, you know, was a big over-the-top character, or a Rock or a Hulk Hogan. Can you name a guy who was just a guy, who was a fantastic wrestler, an interesting guy, and you know, was able to capture the audience with a level of passion that Daniel Bryan did? I can't think of one. There may be one, but I can't think of one.
Well, and we also have to go back even before the Yes movement. I mean, his run was so incredible when you look at it, and it really was only, he came in 2009, so, I mean, that's not very long when you think of how much stuff happened regarding Daniel Bryan, all the different twists and turns of his career. But we have to go back before the Yes movement to the Nexus angle, where he allegedly went too far. Would have been nice if they told him ahead of time, but they didn't. And he choked, Justin Roberts. He choked Justin Roberts with his tie and got fired because they were worried about sponsors.
I understand from their point of view, but they should have said something to him.
Well, yeah, of course. But I mean, even in that situation, I know where you're going with this, Luke, that audience did not give up on Daniel Bryan, who was at that point just a lower tier guy in kind of an overblown stable of NXT guys.
He never appeared with the Nexus again.
Yeah, I know. And yet, when he came out as Cena's partner at SummerSlam, the audience went crazy like it was Hulk Hogan making a return. You know, it was a huge deal.
And even though they told him, hold tight, we're going to rehire you, this is just something we have to do for public relations. Like, he was full on told that. And then they said, don't worry, kid. You know who was the guy then, right? Don't worry, kid. We'll call you back and you can come back and we'll bring you back to the WWF. You just got to hold tight. And he told Johnny flat, that's okay, Johnny, I'm actually going to New Japan Pro Wrestling. And that was when, you know, all that stuff was happening on TV where the crowds were starting to chant Daniel Bryan. And like Shan says, I mean, this guy wasn't a top star in any way. He wasn't even a mid-carder yet. He was an NXT rookie, sort of like the redneck rookie.
Yeah.
An NXT rookie that was just had way more of a connection and had way more of a built-in fan base. And the crowd, like Shan said, they did not give up on him even in those days. So he told them flat out, I'm going to New Japan Pro Wrestling. And that kind of put things into overdrive for them, being like, okay, he's going to New Japan. He's got an offer on the table. He already has been there. They know him. Like, he's in. If we're going to get him, we got to move on this thing.
Like, sign him now, but just keep him off TV. And I think that's what they probably did.
Sign him now and put another 0 at the end. You know, I don't know if that was that much, but still, it was like, okay, he's being offered more money in Japan, and he seems quite happy going there. So we got to do something. If we want to get this guy back, we got to move now, and we've got to give him a better offer.
And yet, let's talk about that. If they saw enough of that in Daniel Bryan to race to get him assigned and to keep him from going to New Japan, why did we have all this stuff that went on later where they refused to kind of acquiesce to what the fans wanted and kind of held Bryan back, gave him a glass ceiling? It's hard for me to kind of consolidate those 2 points of view.
Here's the question. I know we won't take this up till next week or later on at some point. If they don't like what you want right now, Roman Reigns, and you no longer have the guy that they really wanted because he just retired, what's next?
What's next? You turn that Roman Reigns heel, and I've said it a million times. I'm not going to get into it now, but honestly, like, you can still give them what you want, but give it to them the way they want it. It's not like people don't want Roman Reigns. They just don't want him to be the guy, and they don't want him to be the face. But let's not get too far into the Roman Reigns thing. Yeah, I mean, I when I look at the charisma, when I try to contrast those two situations, you look at the charisma and the ease with which Daniel Bryan controlled the crowd. With ease. Like, he knew exactly what he was doing, and it was beautiful. And you can watch, like, from WrestleMania 30, and you can watch even the ladder match from our last WrestleMania, and you can you can just see the audience so connected, and it's so beautiful. And then you have to watch Roman come out, and again, he's a mild guy. He doesn't connect really. I mean, he's been packaged in a certain way that he'll get a reaction, but it's hard to watch those two things back to back, or at least contrast them in your mind, and not really feel like something's just gone terribly wrong. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, even do we all remember Bryan as the asshole heel with cute little AJ Lee as his girlfriend?
Oh, God, yeah.
You wanted to smack the taste out of his mouth, but you loved it at the same time.
And loved it.
It was so annoying.
Do you remember that little mini feud between Punk and Bryan when Punk was the heel, or when Bryan was the heel? And Punk was the world champion. I loved that. I was crazy about that because, again, it was a situation where there were two guys. I loved the heel as much as the face, but I still believed him as a heel. So he was just masterful in the ring at being able to manipulate you no matter what his character was. And when you look back at old Ring of Honor and sort of the Bryan Danielson days, he did it even more then and still managed to pull it off.
Very true. No question. And to be a great baby face, and I mean great, you have to be likable. Not likable because your hair blows in the breeze and you look cool and all the girls love you and because you've been told, like this guy. They liked him because they liked him. The same way you or I have that party we're going to and we don't really want to go. We're like, okay, I don't really know that many people. I don't really like these people that much. And you go to the party, but then you realize, oh, so-and-so's here. Fuck, we're good. We're good tonight. That's who I'm going to hang out with. That's my guy. And again, you don't like him because he's the cool thing. You like him because you like him, because he's nice, because he's a good person. And I mean, that is Bryan Danielson. What you saw in that retirement speech was Bryan Danielson. It's amazing that he can say, I cut my hair and I donated it to Wigs for Charity. Never comes off like he's bragging about it. Never comes off preachy about it. The fans automatically are like cheering, that's so great. Like Ricky Steamboat, Sean, to take it old school on you. Yeah. You always heard that about how people now and then would have an idea, or even Ricky himself, can I be a heel? And it was always shot down by any booker that had a clue, because it's like nobody could possibly boo you, Ricky, because you're too nice. And that was Ricky, and it showed, and that's why people liked him. Not because he came out there and cut a promo like The Rock, not because he came out there and cut a promo like Ric Flair, but just because he was likable. But then what separates Bryan is that although he was that guy, and that was genuine, and it was organic, he had the talent to be an incredible heel. The super preachy vegetarian thing. That was great.
That was awesome.
It was great. And,
but it was so good that you wanted to cheer him, and that's why they kept having to turn him back babyface.
Right.
And I don't want to swerve here, guys, but something just occurred to me. We've been talking for weeks about how, oh, God, I wish that Triple H and Stephanie wouldn't wear all the hats, and they wouldn't come out and be the heel authority and then turn around and be the charity people. God damn it. If you're going to take Daniel Bryan out of the ring now because he can't wrestle, have him be the guy that tells you all the stuff that you're doing, all the charity stuff that you're doing. I mean, coming from Bryan, it's always going to be genuine and always decent because he seems to really, have a genuine affinity for people.
Listen, he is the perfect choice for that, and he is like the Gorilla Monsoon of now. If you were to put him in that role. The thing is, though, if you're Bryan and you can't wrestle, and yes, we've talked about the fact that he made the decision, it still wasn't something he was happy about. It's not like he just all of a sudden doesn't want to wrestle. Yeah. So you're asking a guy now, and this is going to be really interesting because he's staying under contract. He's not being released, ladies and gentlemen. That was going to
be my follow-up question was, how much more time does he have under contract?
He's nowhere near being done his contract right now. So he's around. He's going to be doing the public relations. He's going to be doing
the
this
stuff that he's been doing for a year anyways.
Right. But, I mean, would Brian be able to be so close to something that he couldn't touch? Especially right now. Maybe after a few years, maybe after he's had a bit of time to get away from it, he won't have the same urge. Although, you'll hear guys say you will always have the urge.
Well, but then the question is he going to do all the promo stuff at Mania, all the access stuff? Is he obligated to that stuff?
If I were them, I would say that'd probably be the best fit for him is to be an ambassador because he is so likable. He is so relatable. And again, that's what got him over the most with the people. Sure, they loved his wrestling, and his wrestling was the best. Yes. One of the best of all time, and in WWE over the last 10 years, the best.
Truthfully, you want to use Daniel Bryan, in the way that I think would have the most impact. Put him on NXT or on Breaking Ground. Make him a trainer. I mean, my God.
But isn't that also asking him to be a little too close to something he can't do?
Well, maybe, yeah. I'm not saying right away.
Okay, don't do it now.
Right.
Do it in like a year or two from now.
Yeah, but when the time comes, I mean, the Bryan personality, being able to inject that into the NXT, platform, I think would be invaluable.
Of course.
I mean, you watch Breaking Ground, which I'm a huge fan of, and you see, the trainers there. I mean, they're not on screen an awful lot, but when they are, there's a certain level of impact. I just think Bryan would be fantastic in that role.
Of course.
And draw a whole new audience into that, or even just when it's time, I would say have him work with the young guys because he has something. Certainly, you can't emulate Daniel Bryan's natural appeal, but he has so much more going on beyond that I think it could be invaluable to the younger talent.
Oh, and you're talking about a guy whose training came from Shawn Michaels. First of all, he tried to go to Dean Malenko. It turned out that school was closed. So he went with Shawn Michaels and the old Texas Wrestling Academy. Shawn, does that bring back some memories? Of course.
Yes.
The old Texas Wrestling Academy, and that's where he was trained along with Spanky and Lance Cade. And then went on and was sort of during that whole developmental time, he got a developmental contract with WWE after that for a little while. I think it was almost like 2 years. And that's when William Regal came into the picture, who was a huge influence on Bryan. Right up until, wearing Regal's colors, right? Like, I don't know if people ever put that together, that especially in the Ring of Honor days, just the straight up maroon tights, and boots, and knee pads. I mean, he full on embraced being a protege of William Regal. And you're talking about a guy that's lived at the New Japan dojo at times in his life. He's trained under the greatest of great. He's been in that Inoki system. And then he's also been trained, by Masato Tanaka. This guy has been trained by so many amazing people. He has picked up so much knowledge over his years. It's invaluable. You talk about a guy that is a wrestling. Dave Meltzer says it all the time. I mean, he doesn't say this about a lot of people. Bryan is a wrestling genius. And he could offer so much, but it's just a matter of, it's just something I think he'd have to be ready for. And right now I can understand if being a trainer or being an on-air personality is just a little too hard right now. I would totally understand that.
The other rumor I heard was he was offered a commentating job. So
he was pretty much offered anything he wanted, non-wrestling related. Yeah. He had turned everyone down because he wanted to wrestle, and he thought up until very recently he was going to wrestle. No matter what, he was going to wrestle.
I think the beauty of Daniel Bryan and the impact that he made is he's not someone that's going to be forgotten. If he needs to take a few years off, if he comes back in 2-3 years, the audience is still going to go crazy for him. I mean, he made an indelible mark. So, I think his future, as much as his in-ring future is over, I still think his future is very bright within the wrestling, community, wrestling business, or even outside of it.
What were some of the things during his speech that really you guys are going to take away with you?
I mean, the sincerity, the depth at which he kind of admitted what had been going on with his life and the struggle that he went through. I mean, it was that connection that he always has. When you go back and read a transcript of it, it doesn't translate the way it did when it was actually Bryan in front of the crowd. I mean, he really did put a period at the end of the sentence, if you know what I mean. It really was, this is it. I'm walking away. Tomorrow I'm not a wrestler anymore. To me, I think that took a lot of courage. It wasn't just, I'm going to go away. Maybe I'll see you again. It was, I'm done. And this is the reason why, because I'm not one of those crazy guys who lives for the business and wants to die in the ring and end up crippled because I just loved wrestling so much. You really got the sense that he had a bigger purpose in life. And it was, that there was more for him. I always respect those guys that that say, there's more to life than just wrestling, because it's truthful. I don't care who you are and how passionate you are. If you say that you're going to kill yourself, cripple yourself, and become a burden to your family or anyone else, for this one thing, and that you can't do anything else, I find that more troubling. But a guy like Brian, who had a really good head on his shoulders, and being able to say, I'm walking away, this is why, and I'm done. To me, that was the finality of it, and the honesty of it really stuck with me.
There's probably a lot of guys on that roster that are dealing with very similar things. And I mean, this is going to be a really interesting time, not just for pro wrestling, but for sports as well. Sean, go ahead.
Well, the one thing I was going to say is, you got to remember, Brian found out this, injury or the issue with his brain right now because he was actually trying to find the opposite. He was trying to find a doctor that would say, you are healthy, go wrestle.
And he had found them.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And that's, again, where people are going to say conspiracy, but it's like I say, it's still such a new science. And you're talking about a guy with a pre-existing condition. And it's just a matter of, are we going to risk it? I mean, here's the thing. He's 34 years old.
I look at it as a positive that even though he was looking for the opposite, he found enough information to safely move on with his life. And just to bring it around to what we were saying, I really do think he'll be back in wrestling in some form sooner even than we think.
I agree. Yeah, I think he's too big of a presence to stay away forever. And, commenting on what Luke said before, it really is opening Pandora's box, because through digging deeper, they found this situation with Brian. I kind of wonder if maybe they're going to re-examine their own concussion testing, as far as examining some of the other guys, people that are at risk. When someone gets a concussion, does it go a little deeper now? And what comes out of that? Does your roster suddenly start getting thinned out with guys that are not just out on a temporary injury, but are out on a permanent injury? So, I mean, overall, is it going to be good for the wrestling business? Well, it's going to be good for wrestlers, I think, as individuals, as human beings, if we can start figuring out what's going on with this stuff and, who is suffering that damage. Because, I mean, when you talk about the Dudleys, I mean, this was coming out of the ECW era, where, terrible things happened to people's bodies, and was reflected through the Attitude Era. So, we got to kind of wonder how many injuries are out there lingering. That's the dirty part of wrestling. As much as we love watching these guys on screen, we sometimes lose track of the damage that they're doing to themselves, not just their bones and muscles, but their heads as well. So, I just hope that ultimately they're able to take care of their competitors a little better.
When you look back on his career, sure, there are things that can get you frustrated, that can get you angry, the things that WWE didn't capitalize on that they should have. But at the end of the day, not only is he in that very, very, very small class of people that have had that celebration to close WrestleMania moment after winning the world title, but he is a guy that was taken under the fans' wing, you could say. He was their guy. They fought for him. They never did that for anybody else. Anybody else, guys. We can say Punk. They never fought like that for CM Punk. We can talk about the retirement celebration. We can talk about the fact that it was a better celebration than Shawn Michaels had. It was a better celebration than Ric Flair had. He was given more time than those guys.
Okay, I don't know if it was better than Flair's. It was better than Edge's.
Oh, it was much better than Edge's.
I think it was the best.
It was the best. It was the best retirement celebration of all time.
Yeah.
And who else gets that? Christian just retired. What did they do there? Paul Heyman mentioned it in passing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Go up and down the list of people on the current roster. If this were them, if they had to retire, do you see anybody else that gets the 35-minute closing Raw retirement thing? I don't.
Especially on a young retirement. I mean, we're not talking about an aged veteran. Yeah, I mean, because there's a certain tragedy to it, and they still felt that it was the right thing to do to let him close out the show like that. It really speaks to Brian's connection and how they knew the audience would react to him. But look, we were just talking about who on the roster would get this. Let's take another kind of stance on that. If the WWE Universe, seeing now that they can get behind an underdog and push him to a point where he'll get a main event at WrestleMania, do you see that they'll ever, maybe out of the guys that are out there now, pick someone that they want to get behind again. And what do you think that would do for the future? Because really, when you look at the contributions that Brian's made, and certainly all the guys that have come in as a result of Brian showing that he can sell and draw and that he can connect with the fans, despite all that, we still have this frustrating situation with Vince continuing to push guys that aren't really, really over. And I'm just wondering if eventually we find that the universe has gotten behind another guy and wants to push him to the top, knowing they can do it. You see anybody on the roster today that they might connect with in that way that they connected with Daniel Bryan?
If there's one guy I see, and again, it's not going to be Daniel Bryan, but something similar. Sami Zayn, the biggest pet peeve I have is when I hear people say, Sami Zayn, oh, he can't talk. Great wrestler, but he can't talk. Sami Zayn has that same kind of thing Daniel Bryan has. Not to the same extent, but he's got that thing that draws you in, and he's relatable, and you like him. He's likable. And sometimes, people can look at that Daniel Bryan thing. I know it was his hometown, but that wasn't just males in that crowd that were moved by that moment. That was females, that was children, that was everyone.
People were crying in the audience by the end of that.
Sure. But, AJ, of course, there's all kinds of guys that the fans are probably going to rally behind to a certain extent. But none of them have what Bryan has. The only guy I can see from a promo standpoint that can get you really invested in him as a babyface would be Sami Zayn. And we'll see how things go from there. But
I don't think it was necessarily people wanting to ruin their plans. I think it was, we want this guy now.
And this is the time.
And they passionately wanted him. It wasn't just we're bored and this is the guy we like the best.
Yeah.
They were passionate about Daniel Bryan. If they get passionate about someone else, yeah, I could see it going that way again. I mean, I think there's a certain level of confidence that came out of that whole situation.
But I do think that will take a long time before we see that again.
It's not something that you're going to see repeating itself. Bryan is a very special case. He is a 1 in a million. He really is. We're going to miss the hell out of him as wrestling fans. We're going to miss the hell out of him. But you've got an incredible career. And again, if you only know Daniel Bryan, go back, watch the Ring of Honor stuff, watch the Pro Wrestling Noah stuff, watch the New Japan stuff. He had the light heavyweight tag titles with Curryman, actually.
Oh, that's right, too.
I mean, he's been around. He's done it all. PWG. I mean, he was in PWG even in the early 2000s.
Thank God for online video, boys and girls.
You've got so much you can go back and check out. He had an incredible heel run in Ring of Honor when he came back. First time anyone ever saw him with the big hobo beard and the shaved head, and he wore a cloak. A cloak. He got it from Custom Cloaks online, and he came down to the Imperial March. So anyways, Daniel Bryan, end of the day, I'm feeling happy about him and his career. It was just one of the most incredible careers ever when you consider how short it was in this company and how much he was able to, his WWE run, was short, really, in the grand scheme of things, when you think about how much happened and how much he accomplished. When he was brought in to be slated at that mid-card at best.
Yep.
And things turned out a little differently. Now, guys, before we head out, there was one other thing that we just need to touch on here, and that, of course, is the suspension of Titus O'Neil. What do you guys want to say about this one?
Pretty bizarre situation, huh?
Very bizarre situation.
Bizarre. I mean, you get, for those of you who haven't seen it, I urge you to go and look at the little tiny clip that you'll see out there of in the post-Daniel Bryan celebration. As Vince walks past all the wrestlers, he passes Titus, and it almost looks like they get into a fight or a shoving match. Apparently, Titus reached out to playfully grab him, and Vince looked quite shocked and horrified. And as a result, now, how long is Titus suspended for?
It was 90 days. It has now been taken back to 60 days.
60.
Either way, he's still missing WrestleMania at this point.
He's missing Mania no matter what. Yeah.
What do you think happened there?
Before we get into what happened, I think we need to sort of put one thing out there, because I think people will automatically be like, why would you put your hands on the boss? Are you fucking stupid? Vince is a very physical guy. He is a very, very physical guy. Lance Storm, even, who said he was not buddy-buddy with Vince. He talked about a story where, when you're hanging out earlier in the day and guys are sort of playing around in the ring, and Vince comes up from behind him and grabs around the waist and tries to tackle him. Vince likes to wrestle. He likes to get in there with the big guys. He loves the big guys. In fact, I think a lot of people feel like Vince only truly gets behind a guy when it's somebody that he knows could kick his ass. which I guess the big Samoan brother could. So maybe that's why he's getting the push. But I mean, Vince, it's not uncommon for Vince to be wrestling and horsing around with guys.
So you think this is a matter of something that was regularly going on backstage that unfortunately happened in front of a camera, and they had to take action? Because it looked bad.
It's just like Josh from Tough Enough. From Tough Enough and from Breaking Ground. It just comes down to being stupid. Titus O'Neil made a stupid decision to do it he picked the wrong moment, the wrong time, the wrong place to do it.
He picked a time when normally there would be no cameras, but there was network cameras. They were still on the air.
Right.
It made network.
It was just also in an inappropriate time. Do you know what I mean? Vince had just hugged Brian. He had just had a word with him, which did make it on camera. We don't know what he said, but I mean, to go and sort of, as he did it in a way too where Vince didn't really see it coming. You're sort of grabbing a guy from behind. And who knows what Vince, maybe Vince was upset with how the segment went. Maybe he was just upset in general. Maybe he was just having a bad day. But you picked the wrong time, and it was a really stupid move to try and do it at that time because, he's thinking, well, we do it in the back. Why can't I do it here? So I think really more than anything, that's what you saw. It's just that, because I can't imagine if that wasn't the case that Titus would do that. And the stories are out there. I mean, Vince on the plane, drunk, trying to wrestle Brock Lesnar, trying to wrestle Kurt Angle, getting taken down. You know what I mean? Like, this is who Vince is. He's a man's man.
There's got to be video of some of that somewhere.
One day it will all come out. Know it will.
Yeah.
Slowly it's coming out on a lot of their documentaries that they're putting out, which I'm quite happy about,
Yeah. Aren't those fun?
And Vince flipped out. The aggression came from Vince. It didn't come from Titus.
Yeah.
If you watch that, I mean, Titus was horsing around and being rough. Vince flipped, and it really did from the video look like he was ready to punch him.
Yeah.
And, it was just a bad moment. There's moments you could come up to me and do that where I would probably react the same way. I don't know that I necessarily blame Vince for that. There's other moments when maybe we could have a little play wrestle and I'd be in the mood for it. It doesn't mean I'm in the mood for it all the time,
You should let us know when those moments are, buddy.
I'm feeling good now if you guys want to come over.
Hey, no cafeteria trays.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't do that one.
Shan, do you know that story?
I don't.
Okay, we'll have to save that for another day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ask us about that later.
Again, things that you do when you're young, and you don't care about your body or your friend's body.
That's right.
But yeah, Titus. I mean, it's a weird one. It's a weird situation. But again, I do think people need to first of all understand that it's probably not that uncommon for them to do that backstage. But he just picked the wrong moment, just like Josh from Tough Enough was an idiot and just didn't think when he did that. So again, Titus out for Mania. One less guy in the Andre Battle Royal.
That's
that's what it about amounts to. It's unfortunate for Titus, but I think you're right.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap this up. We want to say peace, love, fuck Matt Stryker, and Shanzi, you tell him the rest.
Wrestling Audio Revolution.